Desperate Housewives Bree Kamp portrayed herself as the perfect #TradWife, always put together, conservatively dressed, prim and straight-laced.
Bree Kamp believed in old-fashioned values. Things like respect for God, the importance of family, and love of country.
She functioned as the more old-school, uptight end of Wisteria Lane's gaggle of housewives, and the show used her to unpack some of the darker truths about what it's really like to force yourself to exist within that constricting, traditional outlook on life, and what can happen when one opens themselves up, even just a tiny little bit, to new ways of thinking. At the outset of the first series, the Kamp family have a veneer of perfection, almost as though they're the presidential first family of Wisteria Lane.
You're the one always acting like she's running for mayor of Stepford.
Bree even dresses the part of First Lady to her husband, Rex. Her outfits are carefully tailored and often reminiscent of what's often seen as the golden era of political dressing, with aspects of First Ladies like Jacqueline Kennedy and Pat Nixon. But very quickly in the pilot episode, we're shown all is not what it seems. Bree is working too hard to create this external portrait of the perfect family, and inside, most of the family members are incredibly unhappy, including Bree herself.
I'm saying, do you always have to serve cuisine? Can't we ever just have food?
Are you doing drugs?
In many ways, at the outset of the show, her values and her commitment to being the perfect traditional housewife are holding her back from happiness. And more importantly, until she lets go of some of her more rigidly conservative beliefs, she can't give her kids the support they need. Her perfectionism makes it hard for her to parent responsively, and both kids push back hard against it from the very beginning. She seems to be unable to shake the very difficult, heavily gendered upbringing she experienced, and as a result can be quite cruel to her daughter Danielle.
I possessed beauty, wit, cunning, and insight. These were weapons all women needed to survive in the world. So take good care of your looks, Danielle. You don't have any other weapons at your disposal.
This backfires on her when Danielle falls pregnant. Bree wants to keep up appearances and raise the baby as her own, but Danielle is reluctant to allow it because she feels she suffered due to Bree's harsh parenting style and does not want her child to suffer the same fate.
A baby is God's most precious gift. I will not have mine raised by a cold, emotionally unavailable woman like you.
In the first season, Bree finds out that her son Andrew is gay and is seemingly mortified by the implications.
Andrew just told me he thinks he might be gay.
What?
That's why he wanted me to come in first. He thought I could take it better.
Well, he was right. I will be waiting in the car.
But as the show progresses, Bree begins to see that a lot of the things she prizes in herself, like her intelligence and her resilience, are attributes that Andrew shares. She comes to accept his sexuality and begins to work with him instead of always trying to fight against him or mold him into someone else.
Honey, you're here, you're queer, and I'm used to it.
This development shows that although Bree is in many ways small c conservative, she can still be open to change. And she begins to see that there's no point in being deliberately self-destructive in the name of holding on to those traditional ideals that make everyone in her life miserable, including her. She also begins to open herself up to this kind of growth in her friendships as well. Most of the other housewives on Wisteria Lane do not share Bree's politics, which often leads to them butting heads. But over time, they are all able to build close friendships in spite of their differences.
There is nothing more important than friendships that endure, especially in a world that insists on changing.
Another big way Bree began to break off from her more staunch traditional outlook is by finding her sexual agency. In season 3, she has her first ever orgasm with her third husband, and it begins to totally change her outlook on how freeing and positive connecting with your own sexuality can be.
Miss Kamp, I think you may have had an orgasm.
No. I've had orgasms before. That warm sensation, that tingling feeling of relief when it's over. No, this was much
Better?
Yes.
By the final season, she's decided against seeking true love and starts having one-night stands instead. Though of course all the while retaining her polite, slightly cold demeanor with the men she sleeps with. She is still Bree after all.
I have had husbands and boyfriends, so now all I want is a body in my bed at night.
So that's it, you're just gonna kick me out.
I am so sorry. Where are my manners? It was lovely having sex with you.
Bree is also a careful study of how, in the way the traditional household is set up, women can't really win, no matter what they do. In season 1, she doesn't have a career and channels all of her energy into creating the perfect home, cooking elaborate meals, dressing immaculately, and trying to keep her family happy. And she's largely unsupported, even when she outright asks for help.
Seeing that you're the head of this household, I would really appreciate you saying something.
Pass the salt?
But even though she devotes everything to her husband, kids, and home, she is still blamed for their unhappiness, much to her own frustration.
You emasculated him. Well, you're not going to emasculate me.
You don't even know what that means, you petulant sock puppet.
The pressure she feels after her first husband Rex dies and her family begins to implode leads her to alcoholism, though she continues to try and salvage some aspects of her family life, clinging to the idea that she can improve Andrew, who at that point hates her.
It's my job to teach you, and you are not half the man I know you can be.
Got news for you. This is as good as I'm gonna get.
If I really thought that, I'd get a gun right now and kill us both.
A large part of Bree's problem in these early seasons is that she is unfulfilled by her role of housewife and mother, and the way it leaves her isolated. This becomes obvious when we contrast early season Bree with later season Bree, when she begins to build a Martha Stewart-style empire. She really suits having a high-powered career and working closely with her friend Catherine, who co-owns her business and helps her out of her alcoholism.
Would you please tell this gentleman that if he calls me sweetie one more time, I'm gonna grab his camera and take a picture of his colon.
The irony is that the more she builds a business on the back of her old-fashioned style values, the less she's actually living out those values at home. We see this as she goes on a radio show to promote her first cookery book, leaving her husband Orson eating takeout at home.
Well, I think a lot of people miss the way life used to be.
It's always been important to me to have the family gather around the table every night for hot, lovingly prepared meals.
We've seen this divide pop up more recently as TradWife influencers sell their wife who doesn't work lifestyles by doing a lot of work to create and support their social media empires. The difference between the Bree we met in season 1, who was gathering her family around the table and cooking for them every night, is that this new Bree has realized that while she served everyone else, she was neglecting herself. We go on a learning journey with her, certainly not without its troubles, but over the show's run, Bree starts to recognize and embrace aspects of herself that she'd previously kept hidden.
I used to think of myself as a good person. Lately, I've begun to realize that I'm capable of doing whatever needs to be done.
Underneath her charming, ultra-feminine exterior, she is tough and resilient, and she realizes she needs to look after herself a little more. And she sees her new career as a cookbook author as a positive contribution to other women who are also in the position she was once in.
I have fallen down more times than I can count, just like so many other housewives out there. We're all just barely holding on, and we all think that we're alone.
But ironically, Bree has no desire to inspire women out of their unhappy positions at home. She just wants to make them more comfortable while they're there.
It's a lifeline from me to those other women because I want them to know there's always a chance to get something right, even if it's just a casserole.
She also starts seeking out men who are less stereotypical picks for a WASP woman.
You could have an affair with anyone and you choose a pharmacist? You are such a Republican.
While at the beginning she goes for men like Rex, a doctor, and a pharmacist, George, who fit in with her existing life, later on in the show's run she tries her luck with more rugged types. In this way, Bree compartmentalizes her politics and the way she wishes to be viewed by others in the pursuit of happiness, though the writers still play the politics card for laughs occasionally.
You found something bad? Is he a dirty cop? Or a Democrat?
Ultimately, Bree does come out on top in a way that we've seen conservative women progress before, in the political arena. In order to become a successful politician, however, it's necessary for her to leave Fairview and all of her past indiscretions behind her so she can reassume the carefully constructed outward appearance she'd perfected all those years before as the perfect WASP housewife.
Tripp then encouraged her to enter into local politics. The following November, Bree was elected to the Kentucky State Legislature.
Ultimately, she can only win in this arena if she pretends she doesn't have a past. Gun-toting, perfectly coiffed, and staunchly set in her ways, Bree Vandekamp is a textbook WASP and very much a character of her era.
Actually, we don't eat meat, we're vegetarians.
Excuse me?
She struggles with the way the world is developing and on the surface often seems to want to travel back in time to the dawn of the 50s housewife. But during her 8-season arc, she comes to realize that the life she'd always been taught she'd have by her own mother isn't actually what women have to have.
All well-brought-up women conceal their emotions is very useful, especially when dealing with men.
And if she opens up to the right people and accepts things out of her comfort zone, she'll be happier and more successful as a result. That's the take. Click here to watch a video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And make sure to subscribe to our Patreon for exclusive new videos.